o'clock. I would like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. The Board of Education for tonight will be conducted completely online. Executive Order N-29-20 supersedes prior instructions and prohibits a gathering space, even if social distancing guidelines are followed. I am hearing an echo. Okay. To participate in this meeting online, please see the link on our website. Live streaming on YouTube will begin at approximately 6 p.m. when we reconvene to open session. The URL for YouTube live streaming may be found on the NHUSD webpage just before the meeting reconvenes to open session. Are there any speakers for closed session items? Okay, there are 0 people in the attendees. Jeff, we'd like you to be, okay, so looks like there are no speakers and there be no speakers for closed session. The board will now leave open session and go to closed session. So we'll see you in closed session.
Looks like we've got everybody back except Sarabjit.
The board will now convene an open session and report out from closed session. The Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, May 5th, 2020 will be conducted completely online. California Executive Order N-29-20 supersedes prior instructions and prohibits a gathering space even if social distancing guidelines are followed. Live streaming on YouTube will begin now for open session of the Board of Education meeting. The URL for the YouTube live streaming may be found on the NHUSD Board of Education webpage just before this meeting. It starts right now. If you wish to provide public comment for this meeting, you may do so by utilizing the raise your hand option in Zoom. And if you are calling in, please press *9 and wait to be called upon. We have 16 total email community member comments ahead of this meeting via our public comment at nhusd.k12.ca.us email address. That comment has been provided to the board prior to the start of this meeting. Additionally, we wanted to remind the public that we will not be responding to the questions posed by those making public comments this evening. Relative to closed session items 3.1 and 3.5, there was no action taken by the board. May I have a roll call, please?
Gonzalez, Rick, Kaur,
Here.
Canlis,
Here.
Chima,
Here.
Wong,
Here.
Nishihira.
Here. Moving on to item 5.2, may I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda?
So move.
I'm second.
Okay, so that was member Canlis with the motion and member Wong with the second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Kaur,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to item 6.1, resolution 048-1920, recognition of classified employee appreciation week. I would actually ask that one of the board members read the resolution. May I have a volunteer?
I'll do it.
Okay. Thank you, member Canlis. Member Canlis,
right.
the floor is yours.
Okay, I will be reading New Haven Unified School District Resolution number 048-1920, Classified Employee Appreciation Week, May 17, 2020 to May 23rd, 2020. Whereas classified school employees provide valuable services to students, families, and fellow staff members to support the schools of the New Haven Unified School District. And whereas the California Legislature and California Department of Education recognize May 17 through 23rd as Classified School Employees Week, and whereas the California School Employees Association recognizes May 17 through 23rd as Classified School Employees Week, and whereas classified school employees play a vital role in providing for student welfare and school safety of New Haven Unified School district students, and whereas classified employees employed by New Haven Unified School District have achieved excellence in all areas of their responsibility, and whereas classified school employees deserve rightful recognition and public celebration for the caring deeds and immeasurable contributions they have made to the New Haven Unified School District. And whereas the classified employees of the New Haven Unified School District have gone above and beyond the call of duty in supporting our students, families, and staff members during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the New Haven Unified School District Board of Education hereby recognizes Classified School Employees Week as designated by CSEA and the state, and designates May 17th through May 23rd as the New Haven Unified School District Classified School Employees Week, and passed and adopted this 5th of May 2020 by the School Board of Education.
Thank you, member Canlis. May I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 048-1920?
I
I
move.
move. I second.
Okay, so the motion was from member Wong and the second was member Chima. Discussion. Okay, no discussion. Roll call, please.
Kaur,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to item 6.2, resolution 049-1920. May I have a volunteer to read the resolution?
I can read it.
Okay, Member Core, the floor is yours.
Sure. Resolution number 049-1920, Certificated Employee Appreciation Week, May 4th, 2020 to May 8th, 2020. Whereas the New Haven Unified School District Board of Education recognizes the outstanding professional excellence of the district's teachers and other certificated staff members, as well as their continuing commitment to quality education. And whereas the New Haven Unified School District commends our teachers and other certificated employees for their many accomplishments in providing guidance, support, and encouragement to our students. And whereas the Parent Teachers Association recognizes May 4th to 8th as Teacher Appreciation Week. And whereas the California Teachers Association recognizes May 3rd to 9th as Teacher Appreciation Week and May 13th as California Day of the Teacher. And whereas school nurses are certificated employees and May 6 to 12 is recognized as National Nurses Week. And whereas teachers mold the minds and train the workforce of the future. And whereas certificated employees such as school nurses and school psychologists help ensure that physical and socio-emotional needs of our students are being met. And whereas the certificated employees of the New Haven Unified School Districts have gone above and beyond the call of duty in developing and providing virtual learning and support for our students during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the New Haven Unified School District Board of Education hereby recognizes California Teacher Appreciation Week, the California Day of the Teacher, National Nurses Week, and designates May 4th through May 8th as the New Haven Unified School District Certificated Employee Appreciation Week, passed and adopted this 5th day of May 2020 by the following roll call.
Thank you, Member Core. May I have a motion and a second to approve, to approve resolution 049-1920?
So move.
I second.
That's Member Canlis and then Member Chima.
Mhm.
Discussion. Roll call,
Comments?
please. Oh, yes, comment, please.
Just want to let our employees, all of our employees, be it a classified, administration, or the teachers. I just want to express my appreciation for their work especially during the COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks very much. Okay, actually, we have the motion on the table. Roll call, please.
Core,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to item 6.3. Last fall, the district engaged the corporate strategy, corporate strategies to perform demographic study to assist the district in developing enrollment projections report, which includes the projections by boundary of residence. Today we have presenters who will be here. I believe it's Dominic Dutra and Karen Daniel Hamburg and Larry Furchoff, who are actually here. Now let's see if we can bring them in, as it looks like they're already here. Okay, so I am going to unmute. Okay. All right. All right. So, Mr. Dutra,
Yes.
take it away.
Well, just
Actually, I think I'm going to hand it off to the demographic people. I'm going to be available for questions as it relates to the real estate analysis. I think Annette wanted to start with the demographic analysis.
All right, you're right. You're right. Actually, before we do anything, why don't we introduce the speakers?
Annette, do you want to go for that?
Yes.
So we have, as President Nishihira said, we engaged cooperative strategies to perform our enrollment projections report. Also, if you recall, they also assisted the district with the boundary maps. And, you know, there aren't very many firms out there that actually would do both services. So we were fortunate to have cooperative strategies be able to help us with this. It's no secret, we've been declining for at least the last decade. And this is really a lot of important and exciting news for us to be able to finally dig deep into in terms of the trends and what we are to be looking forward to in the next several years in terms of the causes and what would be happening in our community and our enrollment moving forward. So I will turn it over to Larry and Karen, who had been very busy and keeping me very busy the last 2 or 3 weeks reviewing this agenda item. So Larry, you're on, and Karen.
All right. Well, thank you, members of the board. Good to see you again, even if it is from this virtual distance that we're working under. Should I go ahead and share my screen for the presentation then? Go ahead. Looks like that's not available.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Looks like somebody might need to allow that for me to do.
Yes, you and I are co-hosts. We should be able to allow that. Let's see. If not, Lance, you and I have access to Larry's presentation, and we can simply, Larry, you can just, even though we won't see you, you can tell us to forward through the slides if need be.
Sure, whatever's easiest. Actually, it looks like it's allowing me now.
Okay.
Let's make sure I have the right presentation up on the screen.
Larry probably works some magic behind the scenes.
All right, so that should be up now, I'm hoping. So what we have is, and Karen is also with Cooperative Strategies, and she'll be walking through part of the presentation as well. So I will be handling, as we try to remember how to use PowerPoint, I'll be handling the enrollment projection piece. Karen will come in and talk about the subdivision analysis later on, and then we'll be available for any questions that the board might have. So the methodology used in projecting student enrollment is a cohort survival methodology. And it sounds sometimes it sounds a little grim to talk about survival, but what it's looking at is how many kids on average progress from one grade level to the next. So that's how the cohort survives from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, and so on. So we're using a combination of information on students who reside within the district, as well as projected information on birth data for future kindergarten enrollment. And based on the historical enrollment within the data in the district, we calculate survival ratios. And again, that's what this chart is illustrating, is how many kindergartners become first graders become second graders, third graders, so forth. So you can see, going back here, you see 100 kindergartners became 105 first graders, became 110 second graders. And this is just for illustration purposes. But we look at the data, and there's multiple ways to calculate these cohort survival factors, depending on how many years back you look, how you weight that information. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. The projections that we did are based on boundary. So they're not based on what school students actually attend. They're based on students of New Haven Unified School District and what school boundaries they reside within. So what we've done is we've geocoded your student enrollment, which is just a fancy word to describe plotting the little points on the map based on where the kids' addresses are. And with that, we're able to identify how many kids reside within each attendance boundary. We also look at where the kids go to school, and we'll follow up with that on the next slide. But when you see these numbers by boundary, when you can look at the report, you'll see that they don't always match the numbers that are in the seats as of the CalPADS date. They're going to be a little bit different, but that's just because it's based on residence, not based on attendance. This chart actually helps explain that really well. This looks at where students live versus what schools they attend. So if you look at the first line for Alvarado Elementary School, and you go all the way to the far right, you'll see grand total 692. So there's 692 students who reside within the Alvarado Elementary School attendance boundary. Of those 692, that first column, 540, attend the school that they're assigned to based on their residence. We have 56 of them that attend Delaney Easton Elementary, 4 who attend Guy Manuel, 1 at Hillview Crest, 51 at Pioneer, 4 at Searles, and 36 at Kitayama Elementary. So that's how the 692 students who reside within the Alvarado boundary, how they, where they attend school. And then if you were to look down the Alvarado column, you'll see again that same 540 students attend Alvarado that reside within Alvarado. 38 come from Easton, 14 from Emmanuel, 11 from Hillview Crest, 23 from Pioneer, 14 from Searles, 16 from Kitayama, and then 41 students who come from outside the district that attend the district schools, and 12 students whose addresses we couldn't match to residences within the district. So a grand total of 709 students who were attending Alvarado Elementary School as of about October of this school year. So you can see transferring out, we have 152 students who resided within Alvarado who attended another school within the district. And we also had 169 who transferred in to Alvarado who either from outside the district or from other boundaries within the school district. So I know it's a lot of numbers to absorb, but it's kind of it can be a fun chart to look at to understand the patterns of enrollment as kids move from one boundary to the next. And programs are going to obviously be a big part of that. And when you have a dual language immersion program at one school, that's going to draw kids from multiple boundaries. So you can see at Searles, you have 42% transfer in. That's drawing a lot of students from a lot of different boundaries, for example, there. Also want to highlight, you can see that out of district total on that line, 854 students transferring into New Haven schools from other neighboring districts this school year. And then based on data from student services, we had 145 students who transfer out of New Haven to go to neighboring school districts. And that number has decreased over the last 10 years. And the number of incoming has kind of generally increased, but it's kind of gone up and down a little bit. But wanted to share that trend with you as well. So this is the overall chart of historical enrollment within the school district since 2010-11 through the current school year. And you can see the enrollment has gone from 12,954 to 11,047. And that's based on the number that was in the student database. I know the number that's the official CalPADS number was 11,004, I believe. So it's about a 43 student difference. Sometimes there's just a slight difference in terms of the number of kids in the database. But I don't know why my computer does 2 slides at once. So there's been a decline of about 1,900 students, which translates to about a 14% decline over that 10-year period. On average, a loss of 212 kids per year, with the largest decrease coming in the numerically in the 18-19 school year. When you do look at that 10-year window, if you were to just look from 13-14 on, you actually see that accelerating decline a little bit more. The first 2 years were relatively flat. You can see from 10-11 to 11-12, was that 53 students decline from 11-12 to 12-13. Again, 29 students, and then we start seeing those numbers increase. So that the 10-year average is pulled down a little bit by that first 2-year period. If you look at the way that the chart at the top is kind of color coded, you can see the darker the red colors, the higher the enrollment by grade, and the blue colors are lower enrollment by grade. And what we're seeing is basically a trend of younger students not coming in as high of a number. There's fewer younger kids coming into the district schools as older kids moving out. And that speaks to an aging community of families who are staying within the district even after their kids have passed school age. It speaks to folks who move into the district who don't have school-age children. So that's the general decline we see. We'll also see some of the birth trends as well influencing that. But this just puts that same enrollment change into a chart format, so you can see that bar graph decline from 2010, 11 to 2019, 20. Let's talk a little bit about birth. So when we are trying to project kindergarten enrollment, we're looking at births within the zip code served by the school district. And this is information provided by the California Department of Public Health. And the most recent year that they have that information for is 2018. So that takes us through the 2023 kindergarten student enrollment. And you can see based on the chart on the right for the 2 zip codes that produce the majority of the students, a pretty substantial decline in the number of births that we've seen over the last 15 years. And so what that shows us is that 5 years later, we will expect to see fewer kindergarten students than we would have otherwise. You know, we've probably heard a lot of jokes and talk about what the current situation is. So maybe the 2025 kindergarten class will look a little bit better than what we're seeing right now based on the social distancing that we're all observing. Population estimates, we also look at that for the county. You can see overall the population of Alameda County is expected to increase modestly over a 5-year period, but within the county, the number of school-age population is expected to decrease by about 1%. So you can see we have some increases along the ages 0 to 2, but we see some declines at the ages 5 to 10 and 11 to 13 range. And then this chart, which helpfully came up without me even touching the screen, shows the school district's boundaries and then census block groups and the projected change in school age population that we're seeing within the school district. So the areas that are reddish in color are areas of increased increased school age population. And the areas of blue are areas of decreased school age population. Not sure what goes on when that just changes by itself. These are estimates produced by the Census Bureau through a GIS provider. And so these aren't necessarily district students, but this is overall school age population estimates by census block groups, which are much larger than the census blocks that we talked about when we looked at the trustee areas. So you can see those areas of blue again, which would be some amount of decrease, and then the orangish would be some amounts of increase. So within our projection methodology, we look at a couple different projection models. We have a recommended, a low, a moderate, and a high. The recommended is based on the more recent trends we're seeing in the school district. A low is the conservative approach, which in this case would be the lowest projection of enrollment. Conservative from the budgeting standpoint, I guess we should say. Moderate is a 3-year weighted average of the cohort survival factors at the elementary school boundary. And the high projection is a little bit more liberal in those cohort survivals. And so based on that methodology, you can see there's the red indicates the historical enrollment that the district has seen, and then it breaks off into what looks to be 3, but is really 4 projections. The recommended must be hidden underneath some other band there. But you can see a pretty steep decline initially, and then in all of the ones that you see, it flattens out a little bit. So we definitely will see the projections show the biggest decrease in the initial years of the 10-year window, and then that slope just steadies a little bit through that period. If we look at the recommended projection, which we think is kind of the range to look at for the 10-year window, you can see next year that number from 11,047 down to 10,841. And then you can see as that travels through 10,626, 10,358 in 2022-23, 10,000 in 23-24, and then in 24-25, 9,807. So that first 5 years, we see a decrease of about 1,200 students. Of the total 1,920 decline through the 10-year window. So the majority of the students' decline occurs in that initial 5 years, with an additional about 700 student decline through the tail end of that. And you can see that, we have at the at the upper grades, we have 900 plus students per grade level from 9th through 12th. And, coming in at first and second and third, we see 700 to 750. So just as you move those students up without additional kids in larger class sizes filling in behind them, we're going to see a loss of 300 students per year just with that first grade to 12th grade differential. And so that kind of explains that. You can see as those numbers filter up what that looks like. The chart on the right-hand side shows just that in a bar graph format. And again, pretty steep initially, and then flattening out a little bit, not as dramatic of a decline that you see in the outer years of the projection. So with any projection comes the factors to consider, and these are our estimates and projections based on what we know of at the time that the projection was done, and based on the enrollment patterns that we've seen. If we could project with 100% accuracy the number of kids that would be in the district 10 years out by school boundary, we probably would be predicting other things that would be a lot more lucrative to us as a business enterprise. But we think it's an important thing to consider that there's a lot of things that can happen over that 10-year period. And this certainly doesn't consider a pandemic occurring as part of this, and what those changes would occur, what would produce in the way of enrollment changes that we're all dealing with. Just as an example, we also don't have on this list housing affordability. And I know in the Bay Area, that's a huge driver of population change, especially school-age population change, with families being priced out of homes and neighborhoods, and reducing the school-age population that way as well, or just finding other housing alternatives in other locations. So these are just among the factors of things generally that can impact school attendance and school enrollment patterns. But I think what we're going through right now is going to be a huge thing to see what changes we see in enrollment as a result, starting when school starts back up again for the next school year, as well as the economy and what influence that has with the housing affordability issues. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Karen now to talk about the subdivision analysis that we did, and she can explain a little bit more on that.
Okay, Larry, go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay.
So what this first slide is showing is the overall student yields by housing type. Just for reference, this is on page 14 of the report if you want to look at it a little bit closer. So the table on this slide details the district-wide student yields by housing type. Like I said, a student yield is very simply the number of students divided by the number of units in a specified area. So in the case of this table, we're looking at all of the apartments in the district. So in total, there are 2,960 units, apartment units. You have 1,028 students coming out of that K through 12, and the average yield is 0.35. And it's very simply 1,028 divided by 2,960. So the tables on pages 15 through 17 of the report detail each individual complex or subdivision within the district, so you can kind of get an idea of how many kids are coming out of each individual subdivision. And then these individual values roll up to the values seen on this slide. So overall, the New Haven Unified School District is seeing a 0.46 yield, which is 0.46 students per housing unit, or approximately 1 student for every 2 homes or 2 housing units. That's just the overall. Larry, go ahead to the next one. So what this map shows is just all of those, all of the locations for each complex or subdivision listed in pages 15 through 17 of the report. You can see there's a little number on there. Those correspond with each number in those tables. Along with this, we also show the areas of housing development, of known housing development, and those are in yellow. On the map, you can really only see 2 of them pretty well. It's that number 92 and 102. Just north of 102 is one that's numbered 103. There's housing development there. And I know there's another one right near 92. But these ones are so small in geography that they're really difficult to see on the map. Larry, go ahead and go to the next one. So this is the fun part. Usually a lot of districts get a kick out of this. So this table details the housing developments within New Haven USD. So these are the known housing developments that are going on. There are others in the works, but I'll get to that in just a moment. So in the table, you can see the development name, the housing type, the number of units that they're going to build or they're planning to build. That, of course, that can always change, but this is as of April 22nd. The applied yield and the student potential from those units. So please, please, please keep in mind that the student potential numbers assume that all units are occupied. It's also really important to note that the students expected from these residences may not all be new students to the districts or to the district, but kids moving around within the district. So that 590 may look like a scary number, but it could be students that already go to school within the district. So the yield applied is based on the table from a couple slides back. In the case of Station East, that's the third one down, an average of all the multifamily units was taken to come to that 0.38 yield number. And that's so the average of the apartments, the condos, and townhomes. The type on that one has yet to be specified. So that's how we came to that 0.38 number. Along with the 4 approved developments, there are 2 preliminary zoning change requests that are waiting to be approved. Should these requests be approved, the housing density allocated would add up to an additional 368 units into the district. So in this case, because the exact unit type is unknown, I went ahead and applied the district-wide average of 0.46 students per unit, and that's what gives us that 169 students. And that is all I have. Does anybody have any questions about any of it, any of the presentation or report?
Okay, board members, raise your hand if you have any specific comments. Okay, it looks like we've got member Core.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions actually. You know, this is really good data. This is data we had been asking for quite some time, and it kind of aligns with the projections that Annette had always been factoring into her budget. You know, the 200, the 300 numbers, but it's good to see how you're driving to that number. What I wanted to just ask was, you know, the 854 students that are coming out from different districts into our district, that's a significant number. And that number has also decreased over the years. But have you looked at any trends within that data set? For example, do we know where's the largest number of students within that 854? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from Fremont? Are they coming from Oakland? Are they coming from San Leandro, right? Have you done any deeper dive into that number? Because you've done an excellent job of hitting every other data, but I didn't see too much information into that large number, which I think is a significant number for our district. It's good to see that we have less than 200 transferring out, but nearly, you know, 1,000 transferring into our district. So we want to maintain that number at least to where it is today. And obviously, once these students graduate or go out of the school system, we want to still hone into those trends, those regions, so we can still continue to get students from there. So that's one question, and I don't know if you have an answer to that before I continue to my other comments.
That's data that we have. We just don't have that available at the moment. We can certainly pass that through Annette to get to you. The incoming transfers by district of residence, we can certainly get.
Yeah, I think that would be good to see. Thank you. I would like to see that data. And some of the other questions that I had, I actually did not know this, but it seems like we have a higher percentage of students coming out of South Hayward as opposed to Union City. Did I read those numbers correctly? When you had the 2 zip codes aligned in one of the tables, you had the South Hayward zip code and then you had the Union City zip code. It seemed like over the past almost 10 years, the numbers were always higher in South Hayward than in the Union City zip code.
Karen, can you speak to that one?
Sure. So I think the table, yeah, I think this is the table you're talking about. So these are the live births, not necessarily the number of kids coming out of those.
I see.
I am impressed that you know the zip code for each like part of the city, though.
Well, I assumed it was South Hayward, but I did look it up because those were the
Okay.
only two red. Yeah.
Yeah, those are live births, not necessarily student counts. It
Okay.
probably correlates, but I don't want to make claims like that right now.
Sure.
And Karen, maybe in the report itself, there is a map that shows the zip codes and what, what portion of those zip codes are within the school district's boundaries and what part are outside, so that South Hayward zip code, only a portion of those students are coming into New Haven Unified.
Exactly.
And my last comment on that was, I know that you have used, most updated data and several different sources of data, not just the census data, but how would the new 2020 census data factor into some of these numbers? Will it make a difference?
Well, it's certainly going to give a new window in terms of what trends are being seen. Because a lot of these estimates that happen, this 2019 to 24, it's all an estimate. And what the 2020 census will provide once people start responding and moving through that process is we'll provide hard data to compare that to see how accurate were those projections that have been done by the Census Bureau and other agencies. So I think it will be informative for that purpose.
So since you have the structure in place, would it be an easy task to flush out the new data with the 2020 census? Or is that something that have to be completely redone to drive to the numbers that we have?
It's certainly easier updating a projection like this than it is starting from scratch like we have done this year. And so, to look at this in a year or two will certainly be an easier ordeal. We won't be asking Annette for as much data and going back and forth as much at that time.
Okay, thank you. And then I think my last comment is just for our district and maybe for Annette to really kind of consider. And one is, we are seeing a lot of intra-district transfers. And I wonder if it would make sense in any way to configure the boundaries or do some sort of adjustments. And I saw them particularly around our low performing schools, right? So if you look at the Cesar Chavez numbers, if you look at the Hildecrest number, the Guy Emmanuel numbers, all of those numbers have, and I don't know if it was on your screen this time around, but I was looking at your more comprehensive data set that you provided. But I wonder if it would make sense for our district. And this, I guess this would be a latter question. Now that we have this information, I'm assuming there has to be some sort of committee that we create internally to figure out how do we make sense of this data? What do we do with this going forward? This is a lot of good information, a good way of telling the story as to what's happening within our district. But I think what do we do? Where we go from here is what we need to work on. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Okay, member Chima has her hand up.
Thank you for giving me opportunity. First, thank you so much for providing us this very good information and very deep. And like Sharon has said before, we have been waiting for this information as board members to make some decisions in the future. And Sharon has asked also good questions. So my question will be that I'm assuming that you might have your firm might have done similar work for other school districts. If you have done similar work for any of our neighboring or maybe in Alameda County or in the Bay Area school district, did you find any anomaly or any outliers in our in your trends or any such information?
Sure. So I'll make sure I'm unmuted here. We've done work in Fremont Unified to the south of you for several years on their enrollment projections, and they've been a growing district for better part of a decade now, which that trend has shifted for them. And so we're seeing some changes there. And I think the economy and the affordability of housing has played a large role in their change. And it is almost as if they were in the middle of two, they have the San Jose, which they're near, they're in Oakland, and they were kind of, as the housing affordability just kind of crunched in on them from both ends. So they were later to the declining enrollment experience than a lot of districts in Alameda County. So that's been an interesting thing to see.
So my question was, did you see any outliers for our school district?
Well, I think with you are more in line with what other districts in Alameda are seeing, especially on the East Bay side. Obviously, if you look at Dublin, that would be the outlier, like Fremont has been in terms of growth. But I think New Haven is more in line with what most districts in Alameda County are seeing in the way of declining enrollment.
Thank you.
Okay, member Canlis has her hand up.
Yes. Thank you again for this information. This is really valuable. And I also appreciate the questions that have been asked already. I'm looking at possible next steps. I'm not sure if you were able to find this out, but we didn't see in that report. Did you see any trends on why students might have left our district and why the other students are coming to our district? Because knowing those could help us plan on what we could do to minimize people leaving and increase the practices on getting people to come to our district that are from other districts.
So we didn't do that as part of this report. I know in working with other districts, they've pulled data from, as a student goes from one district to another, you can see where their files were transferred to, and in the age of having state student ID numbers, you can see where they've gone. Sometimes they will provide a reason upon exit as to why they are going to a different location. Sometimes they won't. So a lot of it ends up being anecdotal. But that's certainly something the district could look into and we could assist with if you were interested, is looking at kind of where those students have gone to as they've left. But again, you've got a kind of a combination. You've got kids who are leaving year to year, but you also have just an aging population where houses aren't turning over to younger families like they may have in the past. That's probably maybe the bigger driver of the enrollment decline, as opposed to kids leaving from one grade to the next. That's a little bit smaller of an issue.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I do have a question, and it's around, it's hard because I don't want you to speculate, make any speculations. I guess the question that I will have is, in talking about the outliers that you've been talking about, Dublin is a good example. Perhaps maybe it would be useful if you'd be able to identify or outline characteristics of that particular school district or that particular community that that kind of explains why there are some districts like Dublin that actually have increasing enrollment when all other factors seem to be the same. Birth rates, I would imagine, I guess birth rates, if we looked at Dublin's, might be very, very different from ours. But I guess the question that I really like to get to is, what are the characteristics of growing school districts that you can compare and contrast with our district?
Well, I think that in Dublin specifically, there's just been, and I don't know the number of residential units that have been built in Dublin over the last 10 or 15 years, but if you were to look at an aerial image of that community, kind of 5-year snapshots, you see basically a whole other community emerging on the eastern end of Dublin. And so that's really, and what's driven their enrollment is these large, fairly dense subdivisions that have come in on the east end of town that are, doubling the size of the population over time. So that's really the distinguishing factor. I mean, when you look at the districts, you can see this on CDE's website. You can find, who are the biggest growing districts by percent, by number, and it's going to be based on the amount of residential development that they're seeing. We see districts, that are growing because there's home builders that are building home on vacant land, and in districts like yours that are a little bit more built out, there's less available land to build on. There's going to be some infill development, but that's generally not going to produce as many students as these, large new subdivisions where there's brand new schools that are being built as part of those homes that really seem to attract families.
So that's very helpful. Thank you very much. So I think the big signal that we should probably walk away from is that enrollment and housing development are highly correlated. That's what we should walk away from this. One of the things.
Generally, yes. I mean, you could see instances where you may see a negative correlation where the type of housing that's being built may not be attracting young families and maybe pricing young families out. You may see districts that grow without residential development, but there's other economic factors that are going on that can cause that. But I would say, as a general rule of thumb, if you see a good amount of residential development, you're going to see student enrollment increases.
But the big, I guess, in terms of like the biggest lever, if that's the biggest lever to predict. So I guess would it be fair to say that aside from the few housing developments that we have in play and some potential zoning applications, for the most part, unless there are either new development, we can basically say that we're capped within a certain threshold, plus or minus, right? So like looking at your trends, there's a high trend and a low trend, but without more housing development, that's pretty much what we can predict, somewhere within that range. Would that be a fair statement?
I think that would be a fair statement. I mean, if you looked back at before the decline, I mean, that would be kind of the peak that the district would likely see in enrollment from the existing housing stock, and now we're just seeing, as homes have been occupied, as people stay, that we're expecting that in school-age population and enrollment to decline.
And so it sounds like if that is the biggest, if that is the biggest kind of predictor, those are all external to the things that the school district controls, right? So like these are all factors that are outside of the district's control. And so are you seeing any, I guess the point is, do you see the because we're talking about it as an example, the Dublin School District doing anything different to to attract students, or are you of the opinion they don't have to because of the external factors, they don't have to do anything?
I mean, again, we haven't done their enrollment projections, so I don't know their exact patterns as well. We did their voting areas, so I was just familiar with how they've been growing due to the amount of development. But certainly there can be other things that can cause the enrollment to grow outside of residential development. I would just say residential development, as we talked about, was kind of the key correlator. But there are other things, high performing school districts within communities can grow without residential development, based on people having a desire to move into those areas with programs and offerings that attract families. Those are certainly things that can drive enrollment as well.
Okay, Member Canlis has her hand up. Member Canlis, the floor is yours. I think you're muted, Member Canlis.
That was from last time, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, Member Chima, do you have a comment?
I think I was muted too. I think the two factors we just covered right now, the new development and the quality of our academic programs, or our, so to speak, in loose terms, which the community members or the parents, they look for the scores of the students. So those will be the two main factors. And I'm sure all of you have seen it, but I have seen it. My brother lives in Mantica. So the 20 years, Dublin was a small town, San Ramon, Livermore, they were all small towns. And now you go there, there is a development, all kind of development. Even Fremont had a lot of development. So our city is restricted. So I think it's fair to say that we need to improve. We need to work on improving the quality of our schools. That could be a factor to attract more families to our schools, rather than, I mean, there will be some residential, but not much. So this is the conclusion I am thinking after studying this report.
All right.
Thank you.
Lance, I have a comment. I can't raise my hand, so I have to just jump in.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Larry and Karen for their work. I really felt like this was a solid report, and it gave us the data that I think we were missing in terms of moving forward to really analyze what our next steps are. And I think communication and advocacy is a good place for us to start in terms of how we can use this data and how we can target our approach to doing things to address the decline. That's one of the factors that Larry, of course, recognizes, is that we can do local things to buck the trend, but overall the trend that we're looking at is in a very quantitative way more likely than not going to continue. So I've always said, you've heard me say this from day one, declining enrollment is not a problem as long as we adjust with the decline. So we need to plan for that, and we will plan for that. That one of the presentations coming up is the 3D strategies to help us look at some of our, for example, our central kitchen and properties to find our best use to utilize those to generate revenue as we're declining. But then also on the flip side of that, to Sarah Jeep's point, we do need to look at how we can locally buck that trend. And I think that work in part is that's where we can really now, I think, have a more targeted way of looking at that in communication and advocacy and other avenues in our district. So I'm excited to break this down more. Thank you, Larry and Karen, for this work, and I'm looking forward to the next steps on it with us locally.
Okay. All right. I see that Member Wong and CBO Hellman have their hands up. Member Wong.
Okay, first I thank Larry and Karen's and the presentation. At least we get a lot of data. I just want to very clear so like those data, according to our neighbors and Alameda counties, or maybe the Santa Clara County, Pinche Costa. Do you think that's pretty normal, or the different directions? As I understand, according to your information, that's very normal, right?
Yeah, I think most districts in Santa Clara County, to my knowledge, and most districts in Alameda County and Contra Costa have been in decline. I mean, there's certain areas of Contra Costa where you will see increases. If you go all the way out to like Brentwood and Oakley, they've been continuing to see growth. But keep in mind, in the state of California, more than half the school districts are declining in enrollment. That's just the reality we're seeing now in our state. As my light goes out, we're having to deal with that reality up and down.
Okay, Ms. Hellman.
Yes, thank you. Larry, could you please go back to page number 12, if you can? I believe it's 12. The 2021 enrollment projection that you see here, of course, it's by grade level of 10,841. Now call it beginner's luck, but before this report came out, that's actually the projection that we are using for 2021. So I just want to put that on record. I heard a comment with regards to the 2020 census. We actually had quite a good conversation on this when we were reviewing the data with cooperative strategies, and I've expressed interest in, now that the structure is in place, it gives us a new benchmark, if I may, and I think there would be an interest in actually looking at that again, because it will reset certain numbers. And as Larry mentioned earlier, it gives us a new window. So we have talked about that and we are considering that. And lastly, I think that was it. No, I think that was it. And thank you, Larry and Karen, for all the good work on this. Thank you very much for all the hours that you spent on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all. All right. With that, then we will move to item 7.1, items from the board. If you would like to make comments for items from the board, please raise your hand, and I will call on you. Okay. All right. Member Canlis.
Yes. I just want to repeat and thank the classified employees for all the work that they do as we celebrate Classified Employees Week, Appreciation Week. We really can't do it without them. What they do for our students and helping us, keeping them safe and fed is so important. I don't want to forget them, and I want to appreciate them. And the same thing for the teachers. Being again, this is Certificate Employees Appreciation Week. I'd like to thank them for all the work that they do, and they do such amazing job, especially now that we are going and doing something different, something they've never done before. They all step forward and are doing their best in nurturing and teaching our students. So thank you for what they do. One announcement. On May 7, that's this Thursday at 6:30, we have an update from our County Superintendent, Karen Monroe, and CSBA Pacer Gabe Weiss regarding what's going on with in relation to COVID-19 and what's going on in our county. You got your invitation via email. So it should be in your email, and it would be coming from Gabe Weiss. That way you know that that's the right one. And again, the May 20 is still on. That invitation will be coming from Penny Peck. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Canlis. Okay, anybody else? Does not look like there's anybody with their hands up. So going once. Oh, sorry, Dr. Thompson, please. You're muted now.
Thanks. No, I actually have to physically raise my hand, so that works. I do have a couple comments that I'd like to address. A little bit of good news. In January, we had a bunch of cuts that we are going to have to make cuts for next year. And the way the budget's going, it looks like it could be worse than expected. We had a list that we put forward in January that included a number of different things. Actually, the first list came out in June, and then January we revised it. We've continued to revise it, and on that list in January was the social worker position that's on the block to reduce tonight, and there were 2 counselor positions and a class size increase. We've been able to slowly pull some of those back, so we pulled the class size increase back. So that was for TKK. We pulled previously one of the counseling reductions back, and that was the one that was going to affect the middle schools. The last counseling position that we had on the chopping block for next year was the one split between the high schools, and the reduction was primarily going to be felt between our alternative programs. I've been working with the counselors at Connolly and Dakota and Logan, and with NHTA President Joe Angeles to come up with an alternative that we think will allow us to keep them full. Well, they will both to basically take that counseling reduction off the table, and so we will be not moving forward with that. In fact, I think those counselors, particularly when I get into talking briefly about next year, could be pretty integral in if those programs expand like I anticipate they might. But they'll be helping us, both the counselor Dakota and Connolly and some of the Joe in his role at counselor at Logan will be helping with creating a better transition to and through and between our alternative ed programs. So that'll be work that they somewhat do already, but will be really helping us build that pathway in a more comprehensive way. So that's some good news. While we're looking at cuts, you know, I don't want to forget we've cut 4 administrative positions as well that are going into next year. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but in the midst of all that, a little bit of good news to preserve one of the counseling positions. So that's good. Teacher Appreciation Week, I see firsthand how our teachers are really helping us carry through. And I said in my message to the families earlier or late last week that I think that one of the things this pandemic has done is highlight the value of the teaching profession and the value of our teachers. And there's never been a better time to appreciate our teachers and quite frankly, to the certificated support staff like counselors and those nurses and folks that help make the teaching conditions for our staff and students as good as they can be. So that, you know, thank you teachers for all of your work. Let's see, moving on to next year briefly, we are, as I've shared in a couple different forums, actively working to come up with options to start next year. You know, that there's everything has to be on the table for us. In the perfect world, we would start with no restrictions. Everything's back to normal. None of us think that that is going to be the most likely option. So it seems like everything we're hearing and seeing would be a hybrid start, some type of start with social distancing and some of the other restrictions we have in place now in effect. So we have a team that is, we're the makings of a team that's starting. We're trying to partner with NHTA and with CSEA in building out options that we will ideally bring to the board. We hopefully by our next board meeting, we'll have a more, we'll be able to share more in either a presentation format about what we're thinking. And ideally in June, if anything that requires board approval, we'll have in place so we can go into the summer with some options that we believe are viable. There'll continue to be a lot of work during the summer, but I think it's important for our families and our teaching staff to kind of have a sense of where we're going. All of that said, there's no guidance, there's no rules, there's nothing that we are getting, that's informing us on how to proceed. So we're really, we are going with the information that we currently have now and building from there. But we know if we wait for guidance and we wait for outside support, it's probably not going to come in time for us to do anything. So we're really working. I know it's our families and our staff feel really, there's a lot of anxiety and a stress that comes with this, but you know that we are working and we have been and will continue to be collaborating with our employee groups to help build this out. So more to come. I have another Facebook Live session this Friday at 10 o'clock, and I'll be addressing this in a little more detail then to talk about some of the things that may be coming our way. Lastly, and I think I've addressed this before, we're looking at our virtual, all of the celebrations at all of our schools for the end of the year. The only thing we can guarantee is doing something virtually. So all of our sites every site has their own traditions and their own ways of celebrating the end of the year, but they're all going to be virtual. Logan has a very ambitious virtual promotion ceremony they're putting forward. So there'll be individual sites will be sharing that with their students and their families as we progress, but that's the way we're heading. And with that, I am done.
Okay, great. All right. Looks like there are no other hands up. With that, we can move on to item 8.1, which is the report from the Budget and Finance Committee. So we have an update from either member Canlis or member Chima.
We have not met.
Okay. All right, then we will then move to item 8.2, which is report out from the Communication Advocacy Committee. I don't think that we've already reported out at the last meeting. We haven't had a meeting since then. We will have a meeting this Thursday where we will be hearing from our Director of Technology, in terms of the status for kind of a website committee output. That's the idea there. But other than that, there's nothing to report. Okay, moving on to 8.3, other report outs from other committees. Is there anybody who has anything to report out from any of the other committees that they are part of?
Yes, so I'm gonna just mention a couple of things that are happening in the New Haven Schools Foundation. They had their Earth Day poster contest winner announced last Friday. There's a lot of good work that students did across the district, and I think there was even one that was submitted to us as a comment. So I just want to thank all the students that put the time in and got a lot of their posters uploaded to their website. So you can go onto their website or their Facebook to see all the winners and their great work. As far as the Pathways to Success Luncheon, which had always been, I believe, in Fremont, it's going to be virtually this time. It's on May 21st from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. like we held on Zoom. It is going to be an online thing, and I believe the platform is going to be Zoom. They'll have more details and it'll probably be shared across all their platforms, and hopefully the district can also distribute that to our families. Lastly on that, they've had a lot of the classroom grants presentations happening over the past week and continuing this week, and they're also happening via Zoom. So a lot of work is being done on Zoom. Nothing has stopped them from doing all the great work. It's just, the platform is different this time around. So keep those dates in mind, or keep that date in mind, May 21st. If you can log in, that'd be great. I think there's this year we've had the record highest amount that went towards scholarships and grants. And that's all.
Did you have something else? Looked like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I forgot. So I was gonna say the winner of the poster contest, I think it's worth announcing her name, is Marissa Torres from IBCMS. She was the best of the show, and if you look at her work, it's incredible. I think the top 4 or 5 posters were just beautifully done. We have a lot of good artists in our district. So Marissa Torres from IBCMS, congratulations to you.
Thank you, Member Core. Okay, Member Wong.
Yes, I just have one thing I forget to remember that everybody know. And for the May 16, and for this, the state still have one meeting is for the CSBA delegate assembly meetings, and it's a special meetings. And yeah, so we're talking more about the coronavirus, the issues. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Member Wong. Okay, moving on to item 9.1, public comment, hearings of visitors on topics not on the agenda. Because of the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order, the district has provided the opportunity for community members to address the board via email at publiccomment@nhusd.k12.ca.us. The deadline to submit requests was today at 2 p.m. Prior to the deadline, we received, actually it's two emails from things that are not on the agenda. Let's see here. We had one email regarding celebrating Earth Day, and then we had one email in support of the Mandarin immersion program. I assure the public that all emails have been shared with the entire board, and we will consider those moving forward. Are there any community members that wish to address topics that are not on the agenda? Please raise your hand and I will call on everybody one at a time. I am looking at the attendees list now, and I'm looking for people raising their hands. Does not look like there's anybody raising their hand, and there's nobody calling in. So with that, I'm going to move to 10.1, which is public comment hearing from visitors on topics on the agenda. Same thing as before, we have received 14 emails relative to item 11.4, certificated management layoff. The comments are clearly not in favor of the support of releasing our social worker. So we have 14 emails to that effect. Okay, if there are community members in this meeting that would like to speak topics on the agenda, please raise your hand and I will call upon you.
We do not have any hands raised.
We have no hands raised. Okay. Moving on. All right, so then we will move on to action items. All right, may I have a motion and a second to approve the consulting brokerage agreement with 3D Strategies for comprehensive district facility usage analysis?
So moved.
I'm second.
Okay, so member Canlis moved and member Wong seconded. Discussion. Oh, I'm in the wrong tab. Give me just a second. Okay, I see no hands, so there are no discussion. All right, roll call, please.
Boer,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to item 11.2. May I hear a motion and a second to approve the designation of the applicants for agent resolution for non-state agencies for application for assistance from Federal Emergency Management Agency?
So
I
moved.
move. Second.
Okay, so member Canlis moved, member Chima seconded. Discussion, please. Okay, seeing no hands, roll call, please.
Coor,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to item 11.3, ratification of agreement between T-Mobile USA and New Haven Unified School District for 1 year of active wireless mobile services.
So
I'm sorry.
moved.
Sorry. May I have a motion to ratify the agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, member Core moved and member Canlis seconded. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Boer,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to item 11.4. May I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 046-1920 certificated management layoff?
I move.
Second.
Okay, so member Wong moved, member Core seconded. Discussion. All right, seeing no hands, roll call, please.
Boer,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Chima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Okay, moving on to 12.1. Or sorry, 12. Are there any items in the consent calendar that members would like to pull for separate vote? Okay,
No.
seeing no hands. May I have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 12.1 through 12.28?
So moved.
You forgot to ask, maybe in the discussion. Okay. I got
So
it.
moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so member Canlis moved, member Chima seconded. Discussion.
Yeah. I have a.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just looking into my question I made. For the 12.22. I was just wondering, do we have any courses offered at James Logan High School which are not certified under A through G?
That question is directed to, I'm assuming,
Scott.
Pisani.
Yeah, that's, that's something, Scott.
Maybe you can give the answer later on. I mean, if you don't have it right now.
Well, why don't we do that? And if it turns out that we would like to rethink about the policy, we can certainly bring it back. And also keep in mind that this policy is at first reading, so you can always bring it up at second reading as well. Okay.
Okay.
All right, then we currently have a motion on the table to approve the entire consent agenda. We've discussed the item. Roll call, please.
Core,
Aye.
Canlis,
Aye.
Shima,
Aye.
Wong,
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye. Moving on to, we're going to skip item 13 because nothing was pulled from consent. 14, board consensus. Are there any requests of staff that we would like to bring up to this to the superintendent? Okay, I do not see any hands. All right. Well, that looks like it. Seeing no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.